No, there's a couple other things I want to get to here first. And to set it up, I want to go back to a soundbite from me on February 14th of 2017, almost a year ago. Almost 1 year ago. Now, what do we have today? We have the news that Susan Rice was frantically trying on Inauguration Day to create a paper trail to protect Obama in all of these incessant Trump investigations. And I have said from the get-go that all of this has been to protect Obama, not Hillary. Protecting Hillary and getting her elected, obviously no brainer. But the decision not to prosecute Hillary on her email server, the reason for that is so you don't have to prosecute Obama. Obama is lied to the American people about knowing she was using an illegal server. He said he didn't know until he saw it in the news. But that's a lie because he was communicating with her on that server, and he could see that her email address was not from the State Department network. So he knew. So this is about protection. Anyway, 1 year ago on this program, I offered up opinions, feelings about some of the stuff going on. At the time, 1 year ago, Michael Flynn was the big thing. And now we've got the news that on the day that Trump was inaugurated, Susan Rice was frantically creating a paper trail, an email paper trail and an examination paper trail timeline designed to protect Obama. And we find out from Byron York, the FBI didn't think Mike Flynn had done anything wrong. Do you know that Comey testified to Congress that he didn't think Mike Flynn had done anything wrong, didn't think he had lied, and yet that investigation was pursued, and now we've got this indictment from Mueller where a plea deal, and people say, if he didn't do it, then why did he settle? He said, because they were driving him bankrupt. Flynn was broke. He was worried about the effect this was having on his family. But we've got it on the congressional record that James Comey of the FBI told members of Congress on a committee that Flynn had not lied to anybody. And it takes us back to the actual FBI interview of Flynn anyway. It wasn't set up as an interview. Flynn is the incoming National Security Advisor. That means there's frequent contact with the FBI and the CIA. And they called over to the White House and they wanted to come talk to Flynn. Flynn said, okay, come on over. He thinks it's going to be a consultation. Instead, it turns out to be a full-fledged interview that he wasn't aware of. But Byron York and the Washington Examiner has a really, really great piece today on all of this. And I just want to kick it off with my comments on this from 1 year ago, almost to the day. To show you just how lame the media is and how little they've got, they're already asking, what did Trump know and when did he know it? And that's not the question. The question is, what did Barack Obama know and when did he know it and what has he engineered here? This all happened with Flynn back in December. Trump had not even been inaugurated yet. And it's still mysterious to me what really happened. Even if Flynn, as the incoming National Security Director, had called the Russian ambassador to talk about it, so what? That's not hard to imagine. That's not a big deal. It really isn't a big deal. Not a big deal. It'd be standard operating procedure. We're talking about the Russian ambassador here and the new administration reaching out, familiarizing themselves with various representatives of other countries. It wasn't just the Russians that Flynn was talking to, but the Russian ambassador, remember, was being surveilled. Standard operating procedure. Also, we wiretap foreign officials. And this guy's phone call to Flynn, therefore, was heard. Flynn was unmasked. Susan Rice, hi. Flynn's unmasked and reported what he and Kislyak talked about. And bammo, Flynn is destroyed. Byron York Washington Examiner, FBI in March of 2017. Then FBI Director James Comey briefed a number of Capitol Hill lawmakers on the Trump-Russia investigation. One topic of intense interest was the case of Michael Flynn, the Trump White House National Security Advisor, who resigned under pressure on February 13th, just after 24 days in the gig. In March, lawmakers wanted Comey to tell them what was up. And what they heard from Comey didn't match what they were hearing in the media. According to two sources familiar with the meetings, Comey told members of Congress that the FBI agents who interviewed Flynn did not believe that Flynn had lied to them or that any inaccuracies in his answers were intentional. As a result, some of those in attendance came away with the impression, after hearing Comey, members of Congress came away with the impression that Flynn would not be charged with a crime pertaining to the January 24th interview with the FBI. 9 months later, with Comey gone, Robert Mueller, special counsel in charge of the investigation, Flynn pleads guilty to one count of making false statements to the FBI in that January 24th interview. So what happened? With Flynn awaiting sentencing, was recently delayed, by the way, until at least May, some lawmakers are trying to figure out what happened between the time Comey told them that the FBI didn't believe Flynn lied and the time several months later when Flynn pleaded guilty to just that. None of these congressional investigators has an answer. They're baffled by this. They know they find the Flynn case troubling from start to finish. The questioning in that January 24th interview apparently revolved around Flynn-Kislyak phone conversation. But Flynn was not told he was in an investigation-type interview. The first thing to remember is that it appears Flynn did nothing wrong in having those conversations with the Russian ambassador. As the incoming national security advisor, it was entirely reasonable that he would be having such discussions. And as I pointed out, even the Washington Post reported more than a year ago the FBI examined the transcripts of those phone calls and found that Flynn did nothing illegal. It's not just Comey. The Washington Post reported Flynn did nothing illegal. So what happened here? Why did he end up pleading guilty to one count? Why has the sentencing been delayed until May? And according to Byron York, indeed, it appears the FBI did not think Flynn had done anything wrong in the calls. If you take the Flynn thing out of this, if Comey's assessment and transcripts of the phone call show that Flynn did nothing wrong, does this investigation ever really get going? And I don't think it does. I think, folks, we are living in the midst of one of the most gigantic political scandals of our lifetime. I got to take a break. Much more on the other side. Now, I want to reiterate, we've got two different sources, and one of them official. James Comey, at the time, the director of the FBI, testifying on Capitol Hill to various congressional committees, that the FBI, in its January 24th interview with Michael Flynn, determined he did nothing wrong and did not lie. And Comey told members of Congress this under oath. The Washington Post got hold of transcripts of the phone call between the Russian ambassador, Kislyak, and Flynn, and they read the transcripts. And the Washington Post published, independently of Comey's testimony, that Flynn didn't say anything, didn't compromise national security, didn't lie about anything, did not say a word about lifting sanctions. That's been the undercurrent of this, that Flynn got on the phone with the Russians and promised them that once Trump was inaugurated, they'd get rid of Obama's sanctions. And they've lied about that, and they've put that out there, and there isn't any evidence of it. Flynn said he did not say that, and Comey backs it up, saying he didn't lie, and the Washington Post transcript investigation said that Flynn didn't do it. So yet, despite that, the guy has had his life destroyed. Despite that, the guy has been rendered practically bankrupt because of this special counsel investigation and pleaded guilty just to end it, apparently. And I am well-known radio raconteur Rush Limbaugh, and I've been doing this a long time, and I am telling you that we are in the midst of one of the biggest political scandals of our lifetimes here. Okay, so just stay with me, folks. I'm unpacking all of this and leading to a crescendo today that has been provided by Victor Davis Hanson. But first, back to Flynn. Why plead guilty when Comey had told Congress that he had not lied? And the Washington Post examines transcripts of a phone call between Kislyak, the lunching Soviet ambassador, and Flynn, and found that Flynn didn't break any laws and didn't give up any secrets, didn't do anything wrong, and they published that. Yet Flynn remains target one in Mueller's investigation, and indeed pleads guilty after a year because he's out of money. Supposedly, family is understandably shaken by all of this. Flynn's been nothing but a super patriot his whole life. If Michael Flynn has characteristics that the Washington establishment don't like, it's that he's a super patriot. And he was one of the first uniformed military personnel on board publicly at rallies with Donald Trump. He made himself an enemy. He was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency during the Obama administration, the military's version of the CIA. He ran that. You won't find a more loyal, patriotic American than Michael Flynn, and this guy is the numero uno target at the outset of this investigation for supposedly giving up secrets or making promises to undo Obama sanctions on Russia in a phone call to the Russian ambassador. None of it happened. Well, there's another figure in this. And guess who it is? According to this great piece by Byron York, it's none other than Sally Yates, the disgraced former acting attorney general that Trump mistakenly didn't get rid of after he was inaugurated. She's an Obama holdover. She was the one who was working diligently in the Department of Justice to undermine Trump's travel bans. Well, it turns out she was fired for insubordination for failing to implement the directives of President Trump. Insubordination. But it was Sally Yates who advocated the theory that Michael Flynn had violated the Logan Act. Nobody has ever been charged under the Logan Act, and nobody has ever been prosecuted under the Logan Act. It's an obscure, long time ago law that she dredged up, and all she had to do was call a couple of buddies in the media and plant the seed, yeah, he might have violated the Logan Act. That's all it took, and here comes a never-ending drive-by media narrative. Michael Flynn may have violated the Logan Act. This is something of great interest to the special counsel, Robert Mueller. And off they were. Off to the races they were. And because he had violated the Logan Act, Sally Yates was saying that Flynn might be subject to blackmail by the Russians. But there was no lying to the FBI. None of this sticks. So everybody's asking, why would Flynn plead guilty to a single count when at the highest levels of this investigation, he was proclaimed to have not lied? Well, maybe Flynn didn't know that Comey had told Congress that he hadn't lied. I doubt that anybody told Flynn. I doubt anybody told Flynn's lawyers. Because in an investigation like this, the name Scooter Libby ring a bell. In an investigation like this, somebody's going to get their head lopped off for something. There is no such thing as a special counsel investigation where nobody did anything. If they have to make up a baseless, specious crime and charge somebody with it, somebody is going to end up being the fall guy. And it looks like Michael Flynn was the fall guy, but he didn't know it. Or maybe he did. Which takes us to the next phase of this. And that is the discovery of emails that Susan Rice has been writing to herself on the day Trump was inaugurated. And these emails are designed to give plausible deniability to Barack Obama for having his hand in any of this. Here is, it's audio soundbite number 2, Fox last night, Senator Lindsey Graham appeared with details, highlights of an email that Susan Rice, National Security Advisor, she's the woman that made 5 TV appearances on Sunday shows in one day to spread the lie that it was a video that led to the terror attack in Benghazi. That's who this is. Susan Rice was sent out to lie for the Obama administration, for Hillary, went on 5 Sunday shows claiming that a video was responsible. It was one of the biggest lies the Obama administration, and that's saying something, but it was right up there in the top 5. She emailed herself about a meeting that occurred. Here's Senator Graham explaining this.
I found an odd and disturbing email from Susan Rice. At 12:15 on January the 20th, the day of the inauguration, she emails herself about a meeting that occurred on January the 5th. The president was being briefed by the intelligence community about Russian hacking in the 2016 election, and had a follow-on brief meeting with Sally Yates, Jim Comey, herself, and Vice President Biden.
And here is Senator Graham explaining what Susan Rice's email says.
She quotes what the president said. President Obama began the conversation by stressing his continued commitment to ensuring that every aspect of the Russian investigation is handled by the intelligence and law enforcement community by the book. She's sending herself an email talking about a conversation on January the 5th with the president, reassuring herself and I guess the president that this would be done by the book. I think that's odd and disturbing because we know that the investigation regarding the Trump campaign was anything but by the book.
You talk about transparent. There's no doubt what this was. They had been doing something. They learned that it might be discoverable, whatever it was. So they write this memo. She writes this email of herself recounting this January 5th meeting, and Obama told everybody in that meeting. Our illustrious and wonderful, brave president told everybody to be legal, to go by the book. Why would he have to tell them that? Why weren't they doing that as a matter of course? Why does Obama have to tell his staff to go by the book? You would think that would be standard operating, lawful, routine procedure, would you not? But the president reassuring herself, I guess the president, this would be done by the book. They obviously discovered something that they thought, see, folks, Hillary losing panicked them. That wasn't supposed to happen. Hillary losing means that all of this, the Steele dossier, and there's new information on the Steele dossier, new information on Steele and his ties to a guy who was a big oligarch buddy of Putin. But at any rate, that'll come here in just a sec. None of this was ever supposed to be known by any of us. If Hillary had won, we wouldn't, not a shred of this would be in the news. To the extent that they would have pursued a Russian investigation, it would have been to nail Trump and to tell any other outsiders, don't ever try this again. This is what's going to happen to you if you do. But we would know none of what we know if Hillary had won. But she didn't win. And so now everybody playing in the stacked deck on the Obama team now has to cover their rear ends because there's a special counsel out there looking at things. And no matter how you stack the deck, things that you never expected to be uncovered are going to be uncovered. And so Susan Rice is out there once again writing an email that, when discovered, will assure everybody that Obama wasn't behind any of this. Why, looky here. He told his staff to go by the book. And again, I say, if you have to tell your staff to go by the book, it might mean that they normally don't. Two more bites before the break. Judge Napolitano, the human Eddie Munster, was on Fox last night, and this is his interpretation.
They must have learned something in the waning minutes of the Obama administration, which made them worry that what we now know they were doing would be discovered. So in an effort to reconstruct history, she writes herself a memo. By the way, dear Susan Rice, don't forget that Barack Obama said, I want this done by the book, and he said it back on January 5th. Nobody would believe this. No rational jury.
What do you mean? Nobody would believe what? Nobody would believe this thing is real? Probably not. But don't forget that Barack Obama said, I want this done by the book. He said it back on January 5th. This is so obvious. The judge here must have been knowing what I was thinking before he went out there and made his appearance. This is exactly right. Something has happened. Something has turned up that they are worried now. Because remember, folks, this wall that has been built here, these boundaries are all about protecting Obama and his new portrait. They're all about that. Now, here's Marie Harf. Marie Harf of the Obama administration. And she was on Fox this morning. Now, she was over the State Department. She's a spokeswoman in the administration over at the State Department. She has now been hired by Fox. She's got a Fox gig. Next up will be a book. In fact, she probably has a book, too. For a lot of people, a book deal and a Fox gig is the pinnacle of their careers. Everything's downhill after that. Dreams realized. So she'd been hired over there at Fox, and she was talking to Sandra Smith, who's one of the info babes at Fox. And Smith said this email that was written by Susan Rice on Inauguration Day, what does it tell you?
It's not unusual at all, I assure you, for administration officials to make memos for the file, memos for the record. It was the last day, and she was making sure that everything was cataloged, everything was in order. She was probably cleaning out her office, I'm assuming. A lot of how you read this email, I think, is being determined by what people already think of Susan Rice. For those of us who worked with her, who trust her, who know her, this email looks totally normal.
See, my friend, it is entirely normal to send yourself an email on your last day in the Obama administration where you recount a meeting 2 weeks prior where Obama told everybody, warned everybody, go by the book. Perfectly normal. And if you worked in the administration, you would know this. And she worked in the administration, so... Now, hang on. This is all part of an unpacking here today that's going to end up with some conclusions of Victor Davis Hanson. I'm going to be interested in your reaction, too. I'll just give you a little heads up. He's convinced, well, the way I'm reading it anyway, he's pretty sure that the Democrats are going to have to drop this investigation one way or the other, because it's not going to end up anywhere near what they want, i.e. getting rid of Trump. He is convinced this thing is good. It's in the process of blowing up on them even now. So, but in the meantime, a brief timeout. We'll get started on phones when we get back. So be patient. Coming right back. And we're back. El Rushbaugh and the EIB Network. I should add, by the way, My good buddy Andy McCarthy also wrote about all of this last December, because it wasn't just Comey who thought that Flynn had not lied. It was Peter Strzok. And that was discovered with some of that we learned between Strzok and Page and all this. But the question, and I just asked this, the question is, was Flynn told by anybody that Comey and the FBI did not think that he had lied? Remember, the Justice Department per se did not file charges against Flynn. Mueller did. Now, I know that the special counsel's in the DOJ. But the FBI did not, which is the normal procedure. The FBI does an investigation and they seek or they recommend charges, but it's the DOJ that has to file charges. And nobody pursued Flynn on this lie until Mueller gets going. Now, granted, it could well be that they ceded all responsibility for that to Mueller once it got going, and that could be the explanation for why they didn't pursue. But the point is, Comey, Mueller, Comey and Peter Strzok both know that Flynn didn't lie. Comey tells Congress that. So the question is, was Flynn told, were Flynn's lawyers told, that the people that interviewed him did not think he lied? You would think that if he had been told that, he might not have accepted a plea. That if he had been told by the FBI, or had been told that Comey had testified to Congress, and that Peter Strzok thought he had not lied, that might have emboldened him a bit. It might have given him some confidence to resist. And had his lawyer known that, a lawyer could have said to Mueller, what do you mean charging my client here? The director of the FBI told Congress that my client didn't lie. This is a huge question, if you ask me. And if Flynn was told, and if his lawyer was told, that the FBI didn't think he lied, then what the obvious thing there is that they thought Mueller would not stop regardless. Mueller has no limits. Mueller has not even been given a crime to investigate. Mueller can go manufacture crimes if he wants. He can try to manufacture crimes. He can keep going until somebody commits one. There's also, Andy has a column coming later today about the judge in the Mueller case and other aspects. The judge who accepted Flynn's guilty plea was Rudolph Contreras. And just days after taking Flynn's guilty plea, Judge Contreras recused himself from the case, and the press has been remarkably incurious about why. So I said we're going to get the phones, but this stuff is continually, as they say, breaking, and it is. But if you're on hold, I'm asking you politely, stay there. We'll get to you sooner rather than later. It will happen today. And by the way, it was Peter Strzok, who interviewed Flynn. He was the agent who interviewed Flynn, who later agreed with Comey that Flynn had not lied. Hi, and welcome to a jaw-dropping day on the EIB network. Rush Limbaugh behind the golden EIB microphone. Happy to have you here. 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. To review, very quickly, we have learned today that James Comey told members of Congress under oath while testifying that Michael Flynn had not lied in his interview with the FBI. That interview was conducted by Peter Strzok, who also said publicly that he didn't think Flynn had lied. The Washington Post reviewed transcripts of the phone call between Flynn and the Russian ambassador, who was being surveilled by U.S. intelligence. That's how Flynn's part in it was learned. And the Washington Post, which wants somebody in the Trump regime to go to jail, said they looked at the transcript and they didn't think Flynn did anything illegal in that phone call. And yet Flynn was pursued to the end of the earth by Robert Mueller until he pled guilty to one count of misleading the agents. And so the question, did Flynn know that Comey had told Congress that Comey didn't think Flynn had lied? Did Flynn know that the FBI agent who had interviewed him did not think he lied? Was Flynn's lawyer told any of this? You have to think that if Flynn knew that the FBI director and the agent who interviewed him both thought he had not lied, it might have encouraged him to hang in during this investigation by Mueller. That we don't know. We've also we've learned of the uncovering of an email Susan Rice wrote to herself on Trump's inauguration day, claiming that Obama told his staff back on January 5th to do everything in this investigation by the book. Everything by the book. Bang. Everything by the book. Very odd. We all know that much of this has been done to cover whatever Hillary and Obama, and primarily Obama, frankly, did to sabotage the Trump campaign. We know that happened. We know that Hillary was in on it, and we know that Obama had to be on it. And all of this, pursuing Trump, has really been designed to make sure nobody found out where all of this was actually happening. It wasn't from the Trump campaign colluding with Russia. It was the Hillary campaign with the full knowledge of the Obama administration. Now, one thing I want to add here is, I mentioned to you that Andy McCarthy has a column going up at National Review sometime soon. I, of course, as a powerful, influential member of the media, get advance copies of practically everything, sometimes without even asking for it. And Andy's column deals with the aspects of Flynn and whether or not Flynn knew that everybody at the FBI thought he was innocent. But then there's this. The curious Michael Flynn guilty plea. The judge that handled this case, that accepted Flynn's plea, was a judge by the name of Contreras. And he removed himself from the case shortly after the plea. And the bottom line here is this. A judge by the name of Sullivan replaced Judge Contreras. Judge Contreras, after Flynn's guilty plea was recorded, leaves the case. The judge replacing Contreras, Judge Sullivan, immediately filed an order directing that Mueller turn over to Flynn any information in Mueller's possession indicating that Flynn is not guilty. So it looks like Flynn did not know. It looks like it had been kept from Flynn that the FBI thought he was innocent. Flynn didn't know Flynn's lawyer because the judge replacing Contreras filed an order directing that Mueller, the special counsel, turn over to Flynn any information in the special counsel's files indicating Flynn was not guilty. Well, all they had there was Comey and the investigating agent, Stroke. Both of them had said Flynn was not guilty. Obviously, Flynn didn't know. It's not obvious, I shouldn't say. We don't really know. But my gosh, if the judge issues this order, we can't say for sure what Flynn knew before he pleaded guilty. We don't know whether now he has grounds to seek to vacate the plea. But this is smoldering interesting. Now, Judge Joe DeGeneva, who was the husband of the warrior Victoria Tensing, did they buy some time on Fox every night? I mean, they're on Fox every night now. Are they? I'm just joshing out there. Anyway, Joe DeGeneva does not think that the original judge that accepted Flynn's plea, Contreras, removed himself. DeGeneva thinks that judge was removed, that other judges on the court may have pushed for his removal because the press hasn't covered this. We have no idea. The press isn't curious about any of this. Zilch, zero, nada. Okay, that's the latest on Flynn. Talent on loan from God. Get back to the phones. Durango, Colorado. This is John. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hello, Rush. How are you today?
Just fine, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you
very
much.
I need to apologize. I'm on the tail end of a cold, so I'm going to sound a little stuffed up today.
I always think people with a cold always sound wonderful on the phone or on a microphone. I know my voice is always deper when I have a cold. You sound very professional. You sound very good.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the Susan Rice email to herself.
Right, yeah.
And I wanted to remind everybody, remember the FISA warrant, the first FISA warrant was issued on October 16th of 2016, about 3 weeks before the election.
Mean to be overly, but the first FISA warrant in April was rejected. And that's important to remember. The first one that was accepted is October. You're right, yeah.
Right, and I'd love to see that first one. And eventually I think we'll see them all. But, so the first one was issued October 16th, and then it was renewed 90 days later, right before she wrote that email to herself. And I think, since clearly it's a CYA email, I think they were CYAing the first renewal warrant, which was just a few days before she wrote her email. And I think because Hillary lost, obviously, the first warrant had been issued and was being acted on. Then they renewed it right before the inauguration. I think they just were worried that it was going to come down on them. And so she wrote the...
Wait. Worried that what was going to come down on them?
Well, the whole FISA process and the fact that they had obtained those warrants without proper evidence. I mean, why did the FBI never ask Steele who his sources were?
No,
Why did they never ask Isikoff where he got his information? The FBI was just flying blind on purpose. And so they were all in on it. And Susan Rice just decided to write that email.
Well, look, you're onto something here. It's not that they didn't ask Steele who his sources were. They didn't seek to corroborate what Steele told them. They didn't ask to speak to his sources. And in their FISA applications, John, they say that they rely totally on the reputation of Steele because of the good work that he's done with them on prior occasions. Even though he's out lying to the media, he's lying to them about talking to the media, they continued to say that our basis for the warrant is that we trust this guy Steele. They didn't corroborate. They didn't even try to talk to any of his sources.
I know. Just absurd. Another point on FISA, where is John Roberts? You know, he's the chief judge of the Supreme Court. He oversees the FISA court. Why isn't John Roberts going ballistic and wanting to know what the heck's going on in that?
Well, he may be, but if that happens, we're not going to see that.
No, I know. Hey, have you ever heard of this person named QAnon? I never hear you mention it on your radio show.
Have I heard of the person named QAnon?
Yeah, he works the 4chan and 8chan. It's an anonymous person, and I think it's General Flynn. To be quite honest, do a Google search on QAnon. It's amazing, Rush, what's going on in the dark web. Military intelligence is coming out. QAnon is a big
I know what 4chan is. I know what 4chan is, and you've got to be careful of this stuff. I cannot imagine Flynn would be doing anything right now, given that he's facing his sentencing in May or his imprisonment in May. We'll see. Anyway, thanks much. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. I want to expand a little bit on our previous caller. His theory on the FISA warrant application, October 16th, it gets renewed every 90 days. So the renewal would have been January 16th, which is 5 days before the inauguration of Trump. And that's the day the inauguration day is when Susan Rice is writing the email to herself, recounting a meeting that Obama had with the outgoing staff, reminding them that they've always done everything by the book and they're going to continue to do everything by the book. To which, obvious conclusion, why do you have to tell everybody to go by the book if that isn't standard operating procedure? Why do you have to remind people? Now remember, we're going to follow the law here. As though sometimes they don't. Now, in this email/memo, this Rice babe wrote, from a national security perspective, however, President Obama said he wants to be sure that as we engage with the incoming team, we are mindful to ascertain if there is any reason that we cannot share information fully as it relates to Russia. But bear in mind, Sally Yates, that's the end of the quote from her email. From a national security perspective, President Obama said he wants to be sure that as we engage with the incoming Trump team, that we are mindful to ascertain if there's any reason we cannot share information fully as it relates to Russia. Now, bear in mind that Sally Yates, the holdover backup Attorney General Trump did not get rid of and who was thwarting his travel order executive memos, Sally Yates testified that she and others sent their evidence of Russian collusion to 17 other intelligence agents. Do you remember this? Obama decided that this intel on Russia was so bad that he shared it with the intelligence units and agencies of 17. Well, maybe not 17 of their countries, because some countries have more than one intel agency like we do. But there were a number of countries involved, 17 or something like that, intelligence agencies that got everything we dredged up on the Russia investigation, which was fake. There wasn't anything. That's how they spread it worldwide. And Sally Yates testified that she and others sent their evidence of Russian collusion to these other intel agencies, including some foreign agencies. So my question is, was Susan Rice covering her rear end about doing that too? This was not by the book. Whatever else this is, it is not by the book. To share our intel on how Russia tampered in our election with 17 other intelligence agencies. They're sending evidence of Trump collusion all over the world. There wasn't any. Meanwhile, she's writing a memo that Obama's telling everybody as they're outgoing, we're going to follow the book. We're going to go by the book. And Rice wrote that memo at the exact time Sally Yates were sending all that evidence around. The days go by, and we learn more and more about what actually has gone on here. And the American people seem to be getting wise as it continues to unfold. Here's Carl in Kingwood, Texas. How you doing, Carl? Great to have you with us.
I'm doing great, Rush. Thanks for taking my call. How
yes,
are
sir.
You? Okay. My question is, Rush, I think one way to hasten the collapse of the Mueller investigation is for Congress, Gramsci and Grassley to refer Comey for perjury, and then refer Brennan for perjury. They have evidence that they committed perjury in front of Congress. So I think that, and just don't wait on Trump's approval to continue to go up. What do you think?
Well, don't misunderstand. I don't think that Grassley and Nunes and these guys are waiting for approval numbers on anything. That's those numbers are relevant for how the Democrats and Mueller and all are going to deal with their investigation. That's all those numbers. They don't. They have nothing to do with Grassley or these Republican investigative committees. I don't know enough to know that if Comey were to be ever indicted for perjury, I don't know what would have to happen to lead up to that. I don't. That's the swamp going after the swamp. I just don't see it. But I understand your thinking on it. We got people lying under oath, apparently. And you and I wouldn't get away with that. We go to jail. Martha Stewart went to jail. Flynn, even though he didn't lie, now is going to jail. You and I most certainly would. But look, what was the... I just had it off the tip of my tongue. There's example after example of this where no action is taken. They circle the wagons to protect each other. It'll come to me. Have to take a break right now. What I'm thinking of will come to me. Be back in just a sec.